and 345 staff. So that's cumulative since March. So 225 children and 345 staff that have been reported to the Division of Child Care since the beginning, since March of this year. We have spent about 24.3 million of the 41.5 million COVID funding for the Child Care Development Block Grant. That's we're a little over halfway through now. So I wanted to let you know that. We have left the areas that we still have remaining funds. So for those of you who have a positive case and have to do a deep cleaning, we still have cleaning funds in that category. And so as you continue to send your invoices, when we confirm there's been a positive case, we will pay for that deep cleaning and sanitation. And then we also will continue to serve essential worker families. I do want to let you guys know that we're keying essential worker families through December 31st. My guess is that will end that fund, and I'll tell you why I think that. We just looked at billing for September, for the first 2 weeks of September, and it was almost $1.5 million, which makes me think we're going to bill out about $3 million for September. And if that tracks for October, November, and December, although there's some holidays and it may not be that full amount, we're going to get close to the money that was allocated in that with what we've already spent. We had already spent a little over 4 million out of that category, and we only have 18 million. So I will keep you guys updated as we go through, especially into November, because I think that's when we're going to know if we keep adding families, and we still have families who are eligible and who keep coming in, but we won't key past December. So just that will answer that question. At this point, we will not be keying anybody past December 31st. That's essential workers. Our normal low-income vouchers that are eligible income-wise, we will key for, they will be eligible for 1 year, just like always. But for essential workers, only through the end of December. And that's probably going to complete all of that funding. But I will keep you updated, because we look like we're going to start really spending it down over the coming next couple of months. We have approved almost 5,000 families for essential workers. It's right at 4,926 as of yesterday. We've taken about 6,600 applications, so those are still steadily coming in. But like I said, if we keep adding, we will only key through the end of the year, and we may start keying month by month for any new families added. But at this point, I think we're fine through the end of the year, but it does look like we'll start to wrap up that funding. I don't know if there will be any additional funding from Congress, but again, we'll keep you updated. There is some discussion about that going on nationally. Until we get a grant award, we just assume we have no funding beyond what they've given us already. And for those families, we cannot put them in regular low income because they're not income eligible. So just let your families know. I know that you all are keeping them posted. They know they're authorized through the end of the year, but I just don't want any surprises for them. And I think we can't make any commitment beyond that at this point. So I'm going to stop there. Kelly, I'm going to kick it. I know there was a question about the forms and just the process for reporting when you have a positive case. So if you'll kind of walk through that with everyone, that'd be great.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, we have been asked for just some general information about what happens if you get a positive case. So I put over in the chat, if you'll notice, a link to a form. This is a form that we're using at the Arkansas Department of Health hotline. So I also put the hotline number that you'll call. So the first thing you'll do if you have a positive case, and by a positive case, I mean a staff person or a child at your facility that tests positive. So not a parent of a child, it needs to be a staff member or a child at your facility. If they test positive, you'll go to this link and fill out the form. This form is going to walk you through identifying close contacts at your facility. You don't have to do any contact tracing outside of your facility, but you'll fill out information for everyone that person had close contact with while they were at your facility. And close contact is defined 6 feet or less for 15 minutes or more throughout the day. So it could be 5 minutes here and 5 minutes there, equaling 15 minutes throughout the day. Once you fill out that form, then you'll need to call the hotline, which that number is listed here, 833-504-0155. When you call the hotline, they'll walk you through everything you need to know for reporting and for quarantining. The general rule, what someone asked me to go over just the general rule for quarantine. So generally, I still want you to call the hotline because things change, and they'll give you the best advice. But generally, if you have say a teacher tested positive at your facility, everyone that teacher had close contact with would have to quarantine for 14 days from the last date of contact. Now, there are some other things to consider, like when the teacher was tested, when they had symptoms and things like that. So that's why I say call that hotline number and they can walk you through and give you exact dates. So there are several of us from the division that are working at the hotline. You may probably get one of us when you call, if you call during regular work hours. Is there anything else? And I'll be happy to watch the chat box over here if you have any more questions about that. But also, when you do call the hotline, you need to call your licensing specialist and report as well. So I know that's another phone call, but we do need to have that reported to licensing as well. The hours of the hotline are 8 to 4:30, Monday through Friday. There is, after hours, it will roll over to a hotline number that won't give you someone that knows information specific to childcare. So they really won't be able to help you as much. You can call if you have questions. There is someone on call, but you won't get someone right away at night or on the weekends.
Hey, Kelly, it's Ashlyn. Can you put the form and the number in the chat box? For some reason, it's not showing up for us.
Okay, let me put that in there right now.
Thank you, Kelly.
And then Kelly, we have a question from a school district, I'm assuming, about if they have a point of contact that's doing all their contact tracing, do they also need to call the hotline?
Yes, school districts also need to call the hotline. And then someone asked the hours. Again, it's 8 to 4:30 are the main hours when you will get one of us. They will still roll over and refer calls to an on-call person after hours on the weekends. It's generally, you're going to get more information calling during those regular business hours. And I'm putting that phone number in there again.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you.
So if you have questions, I want to give our folks, I know there are lots of questions about the criminal background check system. So I just want to make a few comments, and then I know that Kevin Grace and I think Justin Foster are probably on. And so if you have questions, let me just make a few comments about these guys. They're amazing young men who have done an enormous amount of work to help us get automated. And I know that it's challenging, and when we go through a change, that's equally challenging. It doesn't always go as smoothly as you hope. There are other entities that have really kind of paved the way to do background checks this way. School districts have been doing background checks this way for a couple of years. So just, if you guys can just be patient, I think you're going to find that your results are going to come in much more quickly. But I do want to make a few comments about what's happening right now. So we're just one part of a big automated system. And so you're sending those. If you're not using the automation, and I will tell you guys, we got 3 boxes of paper fingerprint background checks last week, 3 huge boxes. So I don't have to tell you guys what that means. It means that staff are handling paper, which paper is the enemy here. But they're going through that steadily, trying to process those for you all. That means it has to be sent to state police. That means there may be child maltreatment forms that have to be sent up to DCFS. That takes time. I will also let you know that the Arkansas State Police have a little bit of lag time as well because of COVID, I presume. So there's several parts, and I know for those of you who are missing, if we're talking about a few days, that's probably normal processing. If you're talking about months, and I have talked to at least one provider that told me they had submitted months ago, then we probably have a problem, and you need to reach out to me or Ashlyn, let us know, who you've submitted and what the time frame was so that we can figure out what's happening. I'm going to kick it off to Kevin and Justin. Type your questions in the chat box if you have questions. That will be easier for them. But they're here to kind of talk to you about it and to answer any questions. And I really appreciate the leadership that they have brought to the work here at DHS, working with all the different pieces, because it's not just DHS. It is the state police, the Information Network of Arkansas. It's a whole lot of moving parts. And they've been amazing to help us stay on track. And we're much closer to it now than we have been. And again, I think as we get into the automation, you guys are really going to enjoy the results that you're going to get much more quickly, and the fact that you're not having to do paper. For those of you who have not gone to the website, and if somebody can put the link into the website, that would be great, because I've talked to a few providers that have not gone to the website. If you go to the DHS website, on the landing page, on the right-hand side, about the second tab, there is a blue, there are little blue markers, and it says background checks. Kevin has put that link in the chat box. But if you go to that, it walks you step by step through the process, and it's really important that you walk through the process. Do not skip the steps. There are some reasons for that. If you submit the wrong forms, the state police may charge you, and we will not pay for those. You may be subject to payment for state police background checks. There have been some wrong forms submitted, and they're telling us they're no longer going to do that. So we can talk a little bit more about that. But just be aware that you need to follow that process. There's also a link to show you how to schedule at the local DHS office, and it tells you where all those local offices are. And we try to get those as close to everyone as we could. We may add additional sites, but I think there are, Kevin, 40.
There are 53 now, so I think we've got the remaining 53.
Okay.
The remaining 13 active now.
Okay, so there should be a site close to you, but if you're having difficulty, and I know a couple of providers have reached out because of locations, please let us know. There could be some in real rural areas that it is a challenge, but we may be able to work with you. But first, go to that list, and I know they're trying to keep that list updated. Go to that list and look to see what is nearest to your location. There are a couple of areas that have more than one. I know Fayetteville is one of those areas. I believe Little Rock probably is one of those areas, and there may be a couple of others. We are working with some other entities to add more as well, but we will keep you updated. I'm going to let Kevin and Justin, if he's available, talk to you guys. If you have questions, I'm seeing a few things coming in the chat box, Kevin, but I'll let you guys have the mic.
Okay, sounds great. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for your time today. And my name is Kevin Grace. I am the Deputy Chief Information Officer and have a data role here as well. So I like to use the term dumb tech guy, right? So Tanya and them keep us honest on the program side, and we try to help with the technology. So we started this, just a little history. We started this, we've got all of these programs across DHS, and a lot of paper going around, and in some cases it was taking, as you guys know, many weeks to process background checks. And so the effort is to, one, centralize that across the agency and give you the power to be able to submit and run those checks yourself, and then move the data electronically so that we can adjudicate those and get you results, so that, you know, we drive that time frame from weeks down to ideally 2 or 3 days, and you can then hire those folks. So that's the goal. We are still, you know, it's not perfect, as Tanya mentioned. And there are things that the law doesn't allow for. Things like we would love to look into, like e-notary services, for example, because you'll notice, and I'm going to share my screen and sort of take you through the process. But today, you know, Arkansas doesn't really support the electronic notary process. And by the way, a lot of this data is covered under some of the regulations, things like CJIS regulations, which are the criminal justice. So one of the things we find out is we try to do something and they go, oh, no, the FBI says you can't do that. And I know some of you guys have asked about, you know, allowing, maybe there's a co-op next to you that has a live scan machine and you want to be able to use those. Well, we can't just make that happen. And we We are in talks with ADE, or we're in talks with the private harvesters to see if we can make that happen. But it's a whole big, thing on the back end to get that approved and make sure you have, statutory authority, and to make sure that that wasn't come from the wrong bucket, et cetera, et cetera. So with that, and please feel free to ask questions. I wanted to sort of just kind of show you, you guys may have known this. And by the way, we're working with INA. There is a subscription fee right now. The reason that happened is because it was what INA, which is the sort of body that handles the front end part of the criminal background check system, had available that we could get implemented. We are working with them in a phase 2, and we're going to try to make it to where, the whole reason for the subscription fee, the design is, if I'm going to do 200 of these a year, instead of having to enter my credit card at every time I want to run a background check, I can just sign up for an account. And if I need to run 30 this month, I'll do 30, and then I'll get an invoice at the end of the month, so that you don't have to plug in your credit card number every time you want to enter a background check. But we realize if you're a smaller provider, that's probably not beneficial to you. If you only need to do 1 or 2 a month, you'd probably rather enter your credit card than get billed for that. So we're working on making it available at point of entry. And I know Tanya and team are helping with some of those costs, but I just wanted you to know that will be coming shortly, the ability to not have to have a subscription account. But if you're doing any kind of volume, the subscription account really gives you that capability to get that invoice as opposed to doing that. Let me just share my screen briefly. And again, feel free to talk or ask questions or put them in the chat box as we're, can you guys see that okay?
Yes, Kevin, it's up.
Okay, so if you go, I'm going to go back 1 page. So if you go to our primary website, so this is the humanservices.arkansas.gov website. And once you get here, you'll see we tried to make it very easy. There's some buttons over here on the right, and you just want to click on background checks. And that will take you to this page that Tanya was talking about, which is sort of an overview of the process. You need to create a provider account, and this is not a source of income for DHS. These are just subscription fees. Think of them as internet fees, right? That INA, which is the group that runs the background check system, charges. So you've got to create an account there. You got to fill out some forms, and really when we say forms, these are form generators to help you so that you're not having to manually fill in paper forms, because you've got to take those and be notarized. And then it also helps us on the back end so that we're not having to try to read, handwritten language, as you can imagine, which if we can't read that, we can't process correctly, or the state police can't, then, that slows the process down. So you need to create some forms. You return those. You go back to the CBC system, and we'll show what that looks like. You request your check. Once that's done, that starts the sort of approval process, and then you'll get a transaction number. You can schedule that, go to the county office and capture your fingerprints, which, by the way, the old process is, we do this, then we mail out some physical fingerprint cards. You get those in. You have to physically drive to a county, to a law enforcement office of some type, or state police, physically get them. Then they would mail those back to us, then we would mail them to state police. So you can see all of this, which now we can capture those electronically. By the way, because of COVID, we understand that a lot of these law enforcement bodies are no longer even taking fingerprints. So I think Ashley and her team, or you guys, are doing some of this Purpose Code X, I believe, which allows us to do some of that. But basically, this will walk you through that. So it talks about starting through the background check. So the first thing is to go to this CBC site. So this is the site that you will have an account, and that's when you just subscribe online. So if you go to this page, this is that subscriber account we talked about. Right now, you have to have that in order to use the online process. In phase 2, you won't have to have that. You'll still need an account, but you don't have to have a subscriber account. So we'll be working on that. But you work through this. So if you want to create an account, you can do that, and this is where you go in and do that. Once you have an account here, then you'll come back to this and log in, but we sort of start that. The next thing is to request, is to create the form. So to try to help you all, we've built a form generator, if you will, right? And by the way, right now, this has some reasons, like I'm a facility, there's different reasons. We understand this is confusing, and we are about to make an upgrade to this form that will sort of walk you through this. And as a part of this, some of you also have to go through the child maltreatment registry process. And so we're going to adopt some of this type of language to the background check form so that it says, okay, you're a teacher and you work for a school, or you're a potential and existing employee of a child care facility. And so we're going to give some narrative to help you pick the right, to make sure you get the right form. But today, let's say that I'm a facility or child care provider, and then you need to enter your name and a number, and you'll go about filling this form out. And then once you click submit, what will happen is, and by the way, be careful here, and you'll see it gives you a note that says, make sure you've entered this email address correctly. So if you're not getting the form, you can check. By the way, you can run this form generator as many times as you need to. If you typed in something wrong and you got the form back and you went, oh my gosh, I typed that wrong, we'll just come back and do it again, because all it's doing is generating a PDF and sending that to the email address that you type in here. So once you do that, that'll send you a form that you can then go to your email. We have heard some people saying, I didn't get the email. Sometimes it gets stuck in a spam filter. So now if you just have generic email, it should come through, but check your spam folder. If you're a bigger organization, have an IT, or you've got Barracudas or big front end devices, you might check with your IT administrators. But check your spam folders. If you don't get it, make sure you entered your email address correctly. Those will come to you. You'll get that. You'll print it out, take it to a notary and sign it, and then you'll be ready to then come back to the criminal background check system and log in with your subscriber account, and then you will request your background check. Once you request your check, now state-only checks do not require fingerprints. So if you're just running a state-only check, you don't require fingerprints. If you're running a state and federal check, an FBI check, and that's a selection, then you will get what's called a transaction number. That transaction number is what you're going to need to, by the way, transaction number, search ID, you'll hear those terms. They're sort of interchangeable. The only difference is the format is a 3-character, ORI indicator, if you will, and then the 9-digit number. So the search ID is just the number, the transaction is the whole thing, 3 characters and the 9-digit number. So those search ID, transaction number are sort of synonymous. But just going back to the process here, let me get back to the web page. So once you've gotten your transaction number, then you need to go schedule a fingerprint, and you do that here through our fingerprint scheduling system. And this again is designed for a couple reasons. One, to let you make appointments. We didn't want to be like the DMV where everybody shows up at lunchtime and there's a line for 800 people trying to get their fingerprints. This allows us to sort of create some time slots and stagger those slots so that you can walk in and ideally walk right up to the fingerprint scanning system at your time slot, get your fingerprints done, and leave. It's not been that smooth. We understand that. We have a new release of the fingerprint software coming within the next few days, hopefully. That's going to make, right now it requires some validation. You have to give them a transaction ID and a date of birth, and what we found is a lot of date of births were entered incorrectly. So right now, if you entered your date of birth incorrectly at the criminal background check system, then you're going to get stopped at the fingerprint system. We're going to take that away, and we're going to let it go through, but what that means is that it could be adjudicated by the FBI on the back end, so it might get kicked back anyway, but at least you'll be able to capture your fingerprints and go through the process. So to schedule an appointment, pretty easy. Just click make appointment. I want to select fingerprinting, and then here you can just search. This is where we have Tanya worked with our team to help us get these distributed throughout the state. And again, there are some additional locations like co-ops, and we are trying to get those requests approved. Tanya's already approved those for like the co-ops, but we also have to get that approved through ADE because they actually own those machines, and we're talking to their attorneys and to state police now to try to get that, but that's not going to be available tomorrow. We're trying to make that happen for you. But let's say that I'm in Washington County. So I can look and I can pick this location, and then it'll say, okay, well, you can pick your day that you want to come and get your fingerprints done, and it will show you if it's gray like this and it's available. If it's not, you see this, they've grayed out for lunch here. So I can pick, Thursday and say, I want to come at 9 o'clock, put my name in, and this search ID is that 9-character deal. That's the 9 digits. We're making a change so that we're getting back to transaction ID, and we'll make all the changes so that that's uniform But you do this and click submit, and you'll get a text message if you say, or you'll get an email at the email you used with your appointment. This does two things. One, you have an appointment now. You can come back and change that appointment if you need to. It also allows us to notify you if something happened with the machine in the office. So if that fingerprint machine goes down, which we try to keep them available, but sometimes, you know, we may lose a hard drive. And I mean, there are computers. That happens. We can mark that site as offline. You'll get a text message or an email that says, hey, you know, we didn't do that. So once you go to the office, you get your fingerprint printed, you click submit. Those results are transmitted at the time that you capture them to state police. State police sends it to the FBI, and those results we should get back within 72 hours. So then those comes back, and then that's when Ashlyn and her team, it shows up in their queue to adjudicate that, and they're able to adjudicate, click a button, and then you get a notice that you're available to start work. So I just wanted to talk through that, and then I'll kind of stop sharing for a minute and then see if there are what questions we might have gotten here.
Hey, Kevin, we have one, an individual has submitted electronic child maltreatment and she never gets an email. So that's one.
Okay, say that again, Tanya, I'm sorry.
So she's doing the electronic child maltreatment form.
Okay.
She fills it out and submits. She never gets an email.
Okay, so one of two things that I would check on, and I'll share my screen again. So let's go back to that child maltreatment form, which is here. Which, by the way, we have a new version of this coming right now. Misha Martin and her team are reviewing it. That makes it just a little easier to fill out and then makes the form much easier to read. Both of the two changes we're making is the form this generates is kind of boxy and kind of gritty, if you've seen that. So we're making it much more sort of human readable, right? So it was our first stab at it, and we kind of made it a little too, you know, like I said, dumb IT guy. But so yeah, if you make sure, two things I would say if you're not getting it. So once you say that you're a child care facility and you want to do this, so make sure, and your applicant, make sure again that you've completed this email address correctly, because if you type in the wrong address, this is the only way it knows to send you that form. The second thing is make sure, check your spam filter, or if you have a big IT shop or it's going through that, check with your IT guys. And if not, let Ashlyn and the team know, and we can actually go in and find your submission and verify that an email was sent. We did have a couple of days, a couple of weeks ago, where there was a change made to the form and it was down for a couple of weeks. So if you submitted, Justin, keep me honest here, but it wasn't last week, I think it was week before, for Thursday and Friday. We had 2 days where the emails were not being generated.
Right.
Again, you can come and do these generations of these forms as many times. So if you come back and you do it and you verify your email's getting, you know, is the right one, and you've checked your spam box and you don't get it, let us know and we'll go find out why not.
So I see several questions about who's filling this out. So the portal information, the subscription, the INI subscription is for the agency or the entity. It could be a school district, it could be a Head Start, it could be a private child care facility. So that's for the entity. So you as the director or whoever's in charge would do the subscription, then your employees can use that, any employees that you're hiring. The applicants themselves, and however you all want to handle it, but the applicant is who is filling out the forms, right, Kelly, Ashlyn? As Kevin says, keep me honest here. But you're filling this out for your employee to get a background check. So however you do it, it can be the individual or it can be you as a director, I suppose, but you're putting it in the information for that individual who's getting the background check. So
Yeah, what
So
we,
there is a, go
Go
ahead,
ahead,
Kevin,
Ashley,
you're
I'm
probably
sorry.
going
no, go ahead.
what we were going to say there is what we have learned is that the email addresses can only be used once because they're tied to the criminal background check. So I believe what we were told is that the email address needs to be that of the applicant. Is that right, Kevin?
Okay, so we gotta make sure we're talking apples and oranges here. So one of the things we've had, so let me back up just a little bit and sort of take my understanding and yes, Justin kind of helped keep me up. Most of the way we understood this is that providers, when you create a provider account, you can have as many IDs under that subscriber account as you want. So think of the subscriber account, and that's here. This is, by the way, this is state police's system. This is not a DHS system. This belongs to the state police and is administered by a company called INA. So once, you know, this is not our system. We're just helping direct you to the right place directly to get background checks. So when you create a subscriber account, you are creating what's called an arkansas.gov account. By the way, this account can also be used for things like renewing your driver's license, renewing your fishing tags, right? So this is an arkansas.gov account. But the account, think of it as an account for your business. So if I have Kevin's Child Care Facility, I only need one subscriber account. I don't need an account for every person that works at Kevin's Child Care. I only need one subscriber account. And if I have, let's say that I have 4 individuals that run checks for my business, I can have those 4 IDs under that one subscriber account for Kevin's Child Care. Then any one of those 4 accounts can go and request background checks on behalf of people that I want to hire in Kevin's Child Care. So if Joe, you know, is one of my people that, you know, runs checks for my provider for Kevin's Child Care, but then I want to hire Mary, Joe would go and log in. Mary herself would not log in here. Joe would go and log in because he's one of the 4 people that has access to Kevin's Child Care subscriber account and would run the background check for Joe or for Mary with Mary's information. Now, Mary would have gone to the form to fill out, because we have to have, and here's the reason for the form, that the statute, the law requires us to, 1, have your consent to run a background check, and that must come from, in this case, Mary, the actual person we're trying to hire. So what happens is Mary needs to go and fill out this form, or Joe can do it for her with Mary sitting there, right? But this would be Mary's information, all of her, and some of this is sensitive, right? So it does have, you know, some sensitive information. Then once this gets completed, Mary has to sign this form. Even though Joe is the company representative that can run the checks, Mary is the person that has to sign this form, because Mary has to give her consent that she is consenting to a background check from the Arkansas State Police, and they use a system called AFIS, Arkansas Fingerprint Identification System. And then that's for state checks, and then they send the federal checks to the actual FBI. But CJIS requirements require that Mary give her consent, and that we also give Mary information about her challenge rights, because let's say that there's a finding that comes back on you, you have the right as an individual to contest those results. And so it gives, we call that, what's that called, Ashlyn? I just said it, but I forgot the word. But that's your challenge rights, I believe. So that's the reason for the form, and that has to be notarized. So Mary would go and use this to create the form, sign it, giving her consent to run a background check on me. She would take that form and scan it in or email it after she's, you know, it's electronic at this point, but she had to print it off and sign it. So she would then scan that back in or give it to Joe so Joe could scan it back in. And then Joe would upload that form as a part of his request for the background check. By the way, don't shoot the messenger here. I didn't make all these rules. I know it sounds like a lot, but once Joe runs the check for Mary, he'll upload Mary's form saying, I've got Mary's consent. I can now request her background check. Once she requests the background check, or once Joe puts that request in, then he will provide the transaction number to Mary and say, okay, Mary, I've put your check in. Here's your transaction number. Here's your search ID. Remember, same number. Go out to, you can go now to the scheduling system, right? And schedule a fingerprint scan visit. This is where you need to have one email address. So Joe cannot make all of the appointments for all of the people trying to get their fingerprint scanned with joe@kevinschildcare.com, because each appointment is tied to an email address. So we really want Mary to go and do this and use her personal address, right? And then that way, any notifications come to her. Joe and the child care facility don't have to be involved in this. You can just say, Mary, go to this website. Here's your transaction number. Use your information, go get your fingerprints done. Let us know when it's done. And then Mary can go and do her thing. So this is the one email address. The subscriber account that the provider, so Joe's account and anyone else that's a part of Kevin's childcare, does have an email address associated with that account. So I wanted to make sure, does that answer your question, Ashlyn, around the single email address thing that we keep hearing about is like Joe working for Kevin's childcare kept trying to enter, he wanted to do one for Mary and one for Sam and one for Bob, all using Joe's email address, and you can't do that. Each individual has to use their own email address. So that sort of takes the provider out of that.
I gotcha. Yes, thank you, Kevin.
You're welcome.
Okay, I want to go back to the chat box. We've got several questions, and I want to make sure we get all of them. So Jessica asked, what do we put in staff files to show they are approved? So Ashlyn or Kelly?
So what we've said about that is that there are some providers who want to have a paper copy. And so we have said that's absolutely fine for them to print off the paper copy and put it in a file with all the documentation they might have on that employee. We've also heard from providers that they want to move away from paper. And so what we have said in that case is that if a licensing specialist there wants to review a record of an employee and the provider can pull up their INA account and show the licensing specialist that it has been approved or that employee has been approved, that would work. We've also heard from providers that they don't want to have to pull up the system and show you that information, but could they keep the PDF or convert it to a PDF and keep it in a file electronically? That also works. So the bottom line is, however method that you want to use is completely fine. We just need to be able to ask for a staff record and you guys to be able to show us that the staff did have a completed criminal background, FBI, and maltreatment check.
Ashlyn, the next one, and it may be for Nora, but what's a reasonable amount of time we can expect before getting background checks back? We are at a couple of weeks on the latest digital attempt, so it's from someone who's trying to use the new automated system.
Okay, so what I would say about that is, back to what Kevin said, we are responsible for a portion of processing, but we also are ourselves at the mercy of the state police and them doing their portion. And so sometimes we do get held up just a little because there's information to be processed still on the Arkansas State Police side. I would say if you're at the 2-week mark or more, to go ahead and reach out to Nora Fawcett. Nora, I believe you are on the call. Can you put your email address in? Please, you can, or anybody else, Nora, you might want to put Brenda's email address in as well. But it shouldn't take us a whole lot of time unless there's something else going on that's factoring in, like if there is a Purpose Code X issue, like if there is something that was misentered into the system that might kick it out, fingerprints weren't read. So there might be some other issues going on. But generally speaking, I would say we're probably around the 3 to 5 day mark. So that kind of gives you a general idea.
The next question is just access to the recording of today's meeting. Becky, are you on? She may not be on, but those are posted on divisions. Are you there?
Tanya, it's Ashlyn. I was just going to say, I believe that she's handling another thing right at this moment. And we do record these calls, and we do get it converted and put up onto the website. So you should be able to check the DCC ECE website, and you can find recordings there.
The next question had to do about the time frame. I think we've answered that one.
I was going to add, Ashlyn, don't you guys have an 800 number, I think, for that same area. I don't know if you want people calling in or not, but it seems like Justin was telling me there's an 800 number as well. I just wanted to mention that.
So the next comment is about their, which thank you, this is about having to send in a copy of the 501c3 with every maltreatment check to show that they are a nonprofit. So I think she's saying that she sent a couple in without it and they got kicked back. So
I can give a little update about that, Tanya.
okay.
Starting on July the 6th, all the maltreatment questions and comments are being handled directly by the central registry. And I put that information, Dennis's name and contact information, in the chat box for you guys to look at. When that process changed and shifted from us doing it and the background check unit to the central registry, they do not know you all like we know you all. And so where we on our team got readily easy at knowing and identifying this facility is nonprofit, that one is not, the central registry are learning. And so I did reach out to Dennis about it. It is true that right now, whenever you submit a request, you do need to provide proof to them, because that's how they know if they need to expect or anticipate a payment from you guys or not. And so they do require that paperwork now, showing your nonprofit.
Ashley, this is Kevin. I can give an additional update on that. I just got off a phone call. So we are working to automate the registry process, much like that we've done with background checks. So today you have to go to our form generator, if you will, and then mail that in. But we are building a system and we're hoping to bring that. It won't make sense. We were hoping for September. We won't get there, but we should get there hopefully sometime in October. It will give you the ability to, one, you'll come to this form generator, fill it out, and take it to be notarized. Again, we don't have e-notary here in Arkansas, but once you have that created, you'll be able to go to a website, upload that form, kind of like you do at the CBC system, and pay your $10 if you want. And what we're working on there for nonprofits is that once they've verified you one time, that there'll be a drop down, if you will, for you to select your nonprofit. So if you're running a maltreatment and your nonprofit has already been, validated one time, you'll just be able to select that, and then you won't have to provide your 501c3 status anymore. So I don't know if that helps or not.
Okay, let's see. A question about if you're an agency that has multiple centers, does each center need an account? No, you can have one. If you're talking about the INA account, you can have one INA account and run all of your background checks for all of your centers through that one account.
Yeah, and if you need multiple IDs, let's say you want an ID for each of those facilities, reach out to the INA help desk and they can help set you up multiple IDs for your provider account.
So just a comment, the results actually belong to the applicant. So yes and no. You as the hiring official can know if that person is okay. You cannot know specific information, but you as the owner of the facility or director of the facility that's hiring, will get notification that a person is cleared to work. That's really all that you get, correct, Ashlyn?
That is right. So you will get notified when the person has the overall approved status. And then you will also be notified if there is a prohibited person. So that is correct.
So, and then the next question is from Jill. It has to do with staff that have not lived in Arkansas for the last 5 years and how they need to get a background check from their last state or current state if they're living in a border state. So for an individual that might be living in Texarkana, Texas.
Okay, so if you are attempting to hire somebody who does live out of state or has lived out of state for the last 5 years, it is that applicant's responsibility to touch base from whatever state that they are coming from. They need to check both the criminal background check of that state. They need to provide their record from that state, and then they also need to check with whatever entity in that particular state handles the maltreatment. Like for Arkansas, we call it the Central Registry. Other states have that very thing. It might be called something different, but it is the Child Maltreatment Registry for that particular state. The applicant needs to give you that information And that information needs to be sent in to Nora and her team, the background check team, where you guys have always been sending your information. And then Nora's team will verify that that information is correct. They do need to have that in order to give the overall approved status. So it is very important that you check that out and make sure that you're reviewing the application when you're taking them in from people.
Thanks, Ashlyn. So question, and Kevin, you were just I can't remember, I've heard this conversation so many times, but how long will the records be stored in INA? 5 years, forever? There is a time frame, gang, if I remember correctly.
I think we've yelled at them enough, and you know, I won't say that this will stay this way forever, but right now we've told them you can't delete them, so they're going to be out there for a while. So right now it's forever. I suspect it won't stay that way. To your point, Tanya, at some point they'll go, okay, well, we can't keep these forever, but they were getting rid of them, but due to some of the nature of some of the child maltreatment data, if we were to ever get it there, they've got like 99-year retention requirements. But right now, they're not going away.
Thank you. And then a question from Heather Level. How long are the maltreatment results taking? That's internal. So staff, what's the time frame for the turnaround on DCFS?
I don't know an exact time turnaround on that. I want to say that they have been it's taken a little bit longer than it usually was, but again, just keep in mind that we've switched around the process and who is responsible for what. So if you'll just give us a little time to get that all nailed it down, then we should be right back up to speed in terms of a turnaround time on those. Again, if you have any questions and you're worried about, it's been a while since I've heard, you can check with Dennis Robbins, would be the first person because he's the first part in the chain of the process, and then also Nora, because we would be able to check to see if we've received it yet from the central registry as well.
And so the next question, Ashlyn, is about the maltreatment checks are mailed back to the provider and marked cleared. So if they want to print those off, where do they go for an FBI or state? Into the INA portal?
Okay, so what happens there is you guys will be getting back the child maltreatment. So just remember that child maltreatment is not currently does not feed into the INA system. So it's two different systems. So once we figure out that it's been cleared on the maltreatment side, you guys will get the letter back saying cleared. That same copy comes to Nora and her team. Then they will take that information and go into the INA system, and if the state police is back and if the FBI is back all clear, then they will do the overall approved status because they'll have the maltreatment in their possession as well. So whereas you will get a letter back from maltreatment, you won't get a letter back from state police and FBI anymore. What you will get is once you get everything run through the INA system, and you'll get an email to whatever email account you set up as the owner, provider, director, and it'll say, hey, you've got an update in the status on your INA account. So then you go into your INA account, and all you're looking for in there is, first, if you have a new employee, it'll say provisional. That's what's going to allow you to go ahead and hire that person under supervision, don't forget. And then eventually what you will see when you sign in is it'll say overall status approved. So that's the part right there that you can copy and paste that over. You can take a screenshot of that, however it is that you want to do that makes sense to you and your business organization. But that's what we will need to see as a licensing specialist when they come in, that overall approved status. Does that help?
Sure, there'll be something in the chat box, but I have another one. It's an FBI check from 2019 that showed as approved on the INA. However, fingerprints were not harvested. The question is, can I use the CHI number, which is our Child Care ORI number, to get harvested fingerprints?
So that sounds a little more involved than I think what we can handle right here on this call, because really I can't think of a reason why you would have an overall approved but not have a fingerprint. So on that one, whoever asked that question, if you will go ahead and call into Nora and let her double check in the system what we're showing on our side. That would probably be the best way to handle that one.
So a question, it states that the background check fee is $13.25 for each one. However, when they received their invoice, each one was charged $14.25. That's coming from state police, I presume.
There's an additional $1 fee for doing it online.
Okay, thanks.
That's what we've been told by INA and ASP.
Okay. So that sounds like a charge from ASP for processing. So there's a question from a co-op. What do they send in if they don't have a 501c3? They're a co-op, an education co-op. That really should be adequate for the nonprofit status, I think is what they're asking for. I mean, is there something documentation-wise they're going to need, gang? It's a good question.
I think
lots of co-ops.
That is a great question. And I think what I would say is just to go ahead and call Dennis and talk that through with them. My first inclination is to say, just to send in something from your school district saying that we are a school district and this co-op works with us, or this is my campus name for the school district, but I'm just not certain exactly what they need, the central registry will need to meet that requirement that they have documentation. So I think the best thing to do would be to go ahead and email Dennis or call him and just talk that through with him.
And again, I would add that we are working to automate the child maltreatment registry process, with adult maltreatment to come right behind that. So soon enough, you will be able to go and hopefully within the next 30 or 45 days, something like that, you'll be able to go and request those maltreatment checks online and get and it will follow a sort of similar email notification. So we're going to get out of sending those snail mail letters and you'll get an email back with the results, et cetera. So just know that's on the horizon.
So the next question, I'm going to run through these pretty quickly now, gang, but the next one is about, they have, it's a question about the criminal, if they haven't lived in Arkansas for 5 years. So yes, you do have to have a criminal. That is a new requirement from the Child Care Development Block Grant. You would need FBI. So if you have the FBI, then you should be covered, and the maltreatment from that state. So you have to have both. They may call it something different, as Ashlyn pointed out, in the other state, but if they haven't lived in Arkansas, you're going to want something from their registry system that handles maltreatment in their state, and then your FBI on that individual. The next question is, if we have staff who just need an updated state and FBI because their maltreatment is still good, will we still receive an overall approval without sending in an updated maltreatment? Good question.
The answer to that
time frame.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good question. And if that maltreatment is not more than 2 years old, then it should be okay. So there shouldn't be a problem. The only issue would be is if that maltreatment was out of date, like Tanya said.
Okay. I think we've created a little bit of confusion. This is so for out-of-state individuals, for someone who's lived out of state, please, staff, let them know what they need. Just run down the list. This is someone who's not living in Arkansas.
Okay, so here's what you're going to need. You're going to need that state's criminal background check. So the FBI, it does make sense in our head that the FBI would cover everything, but what we've learned is that all states do not report into the FBI all convictions. So that much like what we have to do in our state, we have to get an Arkansas State Criminal and we have to get the FBI. You need that from the other state too. So if I lived in Texarkana, Texas, I would need the Texas State Criminal check and I would need the Texas Child Maltreatment check. You would still get the FBI too, but you're going to need it from the state, at the state level, the criminal check at the state level, and you're going to need it at the maltreatment level from that state.
So the next question is, do existing employees do the new background check system as theirs expire? Yes, that would be preferred. And she's saying that it was $36.25 per person online when it was submitted. I don't know what all was involved in that. If that was just, it says per person, so.
I'm not sure about that either. I think that sounds like it's 2 people. I'm not sure about that. So if I were you on that one, you guys, if you did it, looks like Kristen, if you did that online, what I would do in that case is call the INA subscription number. They're the guys that can talk to you about your account and billing. Kevin, do you have a different idea? That would be my best guess or advice.
This is
So sorry, you broke up a little bit, Ashlyn. What's the question again?
So this is about the cost, Kevin, of actually running the background checks. And I'm seeing a couple of comments here, and thank you, several of you are putting in that it's costing $36.25 per person, the state criminal and the FBI. So you all should not be paying for state criminal. The child care is getting the billing for that. We generally always paid for that.
I think what they may be referring to, Tanya, is on the confirmation page. It does list out both fees.
Okay.
It just doesn't say how it's allocated. So
Okay, I see that. Someone's pointing out they don't actually charge it, but the
Right.
invoice. Okay.
On the invoice you get at the
Okay.
end of the month, it should just have your portion.
Okay, so
That makes
what you want to pay attention to, gang, then is so you will get an invoice in the portal. We get an invoice too, trust me. Ours is a real big invoice. But you should pay attention to the invoice, not what it says on there, because it's going to have all the cost apparently posted. But if your invoice is showing that, then reach out to, and we can help you connect with someone at INA. I think we put a number out on the website, but if we need to help you with that, let us know. Hold on a second, I want to go back. So a question, child maltreatment, if a private school, yes, you would put that in the place of the school district. Okay, so this is the question, and I know this is a lot of new stuff, so it's how things can get communicated, especially on a Zoom call incorrectly. So let me just walk through this question. Do the results belong to the applicant? I hope I didn't misunderstand the answer, but if that's true, does that mean that if we run a background check through our account, it will or will not tie them to our organization? So yes, the way it's designed and the way it's all set up with the INA account, it is connected to your licensed facility when you run a background check on Tanya as the applicant for employment. So it does. What I'm referring to is if you have a cleared result, it's going to let you know that you have a cleared result on Tanya if she's your applicant. But if Tanya has a hit, it is not going to let you know the details of that because that's sensitive criminal justice information that the FBI does not allow to be disclosed to anyone except for the individual, for them to adjudicate, for them to reach out and make sure they clarify, or maybe they have a twin. We do sometimes have some interesting scenarios where somebody's name is the same. So there are some situations that when they call and reach out, they can clarify that this is not the right person, but it belongs to that individual. But you will get information, and it's in the portal when that individual is cleared. Correct, staff?
That's right. You got it.
Okay. And Kevin has posted help desk information for INA. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate that. So for all the criminal background check information, if it is posted, as Kevin walked through that website page, most of this information and a lot of clarifying information is listed there. But if you get into something and you have problems, Ashlyn has indicated reach out to either she or Nora or your licensing staff, and they will help route you to the appropriate staff. I don't want you to be frustrated. Nora's team handles all of the criminal background check and background check information, and they will help route you to the appropriate. Just so you all know, historically, we took in all of the maltreatment in our division. Those were mailed here, and then we took them upstairs. It is a really, all of these processes are just a lot of processes. We are now having you mail those directly to DCFS as we go forward. That is the forward thinking, or they will go through an automated system where you don't have to mail anything. You just fill it in and it goes to them. But it takes all this hand carrying because we had an audit exception for that. And it's ridiculous that we were doing it the way we were doing it. So we've got to change that. So just know that there are reasons for all these changes. But as we go forward, I think you can still do a paper one now. But if you do the automation, and as we go forward, as Kevin pointed out, a lot of that's going to be very automated so that the form is online and it's submitted to DCFS. But now you can actually mail the form to them as well, instead of mailing it to our division. It just keeps things very clean when the people that are actually doing it get the check for it and the actual form for it. So I hope this was helpful. I know you probably have a lot more questions. The calls are recorded. It will be posted on the website. Someone pointed out that the chat box text is not available on the recordings, and that is true, but I think most of the information is on the website. We've gone over just a little bit, gang, but we will be back in 2 weeks, and just stay safe. I do just want to shout out to you guys that it would be really easy to get very relaxed right now